Welcome to Around the Fencepost, where grit meets growth, stories spark change, and real conversations build stronger farms and futures.
All right, so we were talking about the eggs, when you were doing all the farm raised eggs, and then you went into the beef. And your first year, you said was three that you did.
Yes, sir. And I think on those three, I sold the last one after it had been hanging at the processor for a week, and my granddad bought it from me. And so I found out that just because you raise something on the farm doesn't mean that there's going to be a lot of people knocking on the door to buy it right away. Now, 3 years, well, I guess that was really about 6 years ago, and this year I'll send about 30 to locals to sell as local beef. So it's definitely a business that can grow, but it is a very slow growing business, at least in my experience.
I will say that was probably one of the biggest catalyst for our farm to table growing was me working public jobs. So I had a factory job there for a few years. I think when I started working with Mr. Nick, I was working that job. And I would quite a few of the people, when they'd find out we had beef, they were very really good about supporting a coworker, supporting. So that was probably a big help to I guess one of the advantages to having that public job if you're going to be in the cattle. But that's a good call out, because it almost does feel that way, um where it can be, oh yeah, I'm just going to sell farm to table, and I've got people that tell me on a regular basis, you're charging this for it, you need to be getting this. Well, great, get it. Like, if you think it's so easy, you pay what I'm charging and you go make the difference, and you go
Yeah.
right ahead, buddy. So so some of that goes. But let's go the opposite way. What'd you get right the first time that's really um made a difference, where you did it and then went, oh wow, that was a really good decision?
Well, I didn't, this isn't necessarily a change that I made, but I was very tempted to cut out the artificial insemination because a, it wasn't cheap to do. It was very labor intensive and very, an added price per cow. But I've been very glad that I've stuck with that. I've improved the quality on my cows. I've been able to take advantage of breeding, terminal genetics to raise some really nice feeder calves. And so, not because I cut out quite a few things that Mr. Nick did that, you know, weren't they weren't necessary, and they were expensive things to do. But I didn't cut that out, and I didn't cut out drilling all the pastures with winter grazing. And those are two of the things that make my operation stand out from a lot of other cattle operations is, what I'm putting in the pastures every winter to graze, and then artificial insemination in a commercial beef herd.
I just brought you seed down there a couple of weeks ago, and in the process of that, we were talking about getting this schedule, and you were not going to be able to do the one day that we talked about because you had a farm that somebody had actually reached out to you to come and look at. What's driving the growth that you're experiencing as you continue to have cattle across your county there, where you're able to continue to add to the cow calf herd?
Diversifying landowners is something that some of my mentors have been very encouraged me to do. Even I have great relationships with all my landlords, but you know, you're one tragedy away from land getting sold pretty quick. And so, as an effort to have more cows spread across more landowners is a big part of it. And then, I don't think we're going to stay where we are at in the cow market today forever. but I am very optimistic about the future of the beef market going forward, and I think that it's a business that I can grow and hopefully pass down one day. And it's one that I am very optimistic about.
What do you see as your largest bottlenecks? Land, equipment, labor, time? It could be anything like that. The cost of this, that, or the other. What's your
I'd
biggest?
say land is a big one, which I mean I'm running light stocked right now. I could be running more cows than I am. I've got the land as of today. I'd say the biggest thing is the time of, you 9 months from when a cow gets bred to having a calf on the ground, and then another, 7 to 9 months from selling that calf. And so it's a very slow growth. If I buy 4 month bred cows, I'm a year out from getting any money back. And the money I'm going to get back is probably not going to pay for what I paid for the cow. And it's definitely not going to pay for what I paid for the cow and what I've got into it and the calf to get it to that point. And then for me, raising a bunch of my heifers and really trying to focus on that as opposed to going and buying cattle, it makes it even slower because I'm 2 years out from when I got a cow that I really like, have a nice heifer calf get born till when that heifer calf produces. And so that time aspect is definitely feels like a bottleneck to me. And then, the cost of production is very high. I got 40 acres of hay that's going to be cut next week. And when my fertilizer dealer told me what it was going to cost to spread my DAP and nitrogen back, well, it's going to make that hay pretty expensive hay. And so that kind of thing is definitely a form of a bottleneck, but at the same time, it's good incentive to try new things, to experiment, because what I'm doing now is expensive. And so it makes the experiments to try a different way of winter feeding or different way of, making something less labor intensive, makes it not so far out of reach.
So, and you're mentioning still buying cows when you can find the right price on some or a herd somewhere in there. What what factors into your risk management without talking about dollars and cents exactly? What do you look at specifically? Is it an age thing? Is it how far bred are they? Where are you looking at when it comes to the way you're mitigating some of those risks when you look at that?
Well, all the cows I've bought in the last year have been old cows. And so I'm looking at it as, and I bought a lot of older pairs last year, and that turned out to be, I didn't have to worry about the cow getting bred back. All I worried about was weaning the calf. And with the way this market went from when I bought them in that dip back at Thanksgiving of last year to now, as I sold the calves last Friday for what I gave for the pairs. And so I was left with a 10-year-old cow, and about half of them I bought. I guess was 75% of them bred back into my window to calve this fall. So I'm gonna calve them again, and I sent the rest. The rest are still on some of that triticale right now, getting fat, and I'm gonna send them probably in the next. If it don't rain this week, I'll send them pretty soon. And so that for me is, I look at, if I'm buying a pair, if I can sell the calf and the cow, because I'm not buying them to keep long term, makes it easier for me as far as looking at market trends. Is buying a $4,000 bred cow that it may last me another 7 years. I don't know what the market's going to do in 7 years, and so these I'm more confident on buying them and turning them over in the more similar way to how our market is today.
That makes a lot of sense. And then you mentioned that other of, hey, if we don't get rain, it's time for them to go too, because that's a really good call out with the way we're shaping up.
Well,
And
and
I
it's nice to have a decent amount of cows that you're not sad to part with. It makes it easier than if, which I wouldn't mind selling some 5-year-old pairs right now or some bred 5-year-olds. That would be pretty fun to get that check too. But as far as growing my herd is me selling these cows. If I sell some of these 10-year-old breds, it's going to slow down the amount of calves I have this fall, but I don't feel like I'm cutting out from what I consider my main herd. These cows came in for a purpose to eat up excess hay that I bought last year and eat up this spring growth that I deal with every spring. And so if it gets dry and I don't have the grass through the summer, it's not going to bother me a bit to send them on down.
Yeah. And that makes sense, and that's unless somebody gets out there and starts doing a rain dance, which I should be careful saying. Some lady got really mad at me one time. I had a reel with my brother and my kids just messing around. I said, "Oh, look, they're doing a rain dance on social media." This was a few years ago, and some lady yelled at me on Facebook, and it was somebody I'd never heard of. Just somebody just came across my video, so we can't say that. But do a rain dance, George.
We're
Bring it.
doing it. We won't talk about it, but we're doing it.
This one's part of this interview that for me is one of the most, I guess for somebody like me, I'm at a point where I try to talk to people that maybe from whatever walk of life they're in, but where I want to talk to somebody that has done well in their respective fields. And a big thing in that conversation is talking about mindset. So that's something that for you at a really young age, and I don't mean to keep harping on your age because I understand that you're rolling now and it's been a few years since you started. But the mindset on getting into this and not overreacting one way or another, just staying steady and focused on growth, focused on the horizon, so to speak. Um, let's just talk about that a little bit. What's that been like? You've mentioned that you've got a few people in that along those lines for you. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I think having people to run your ideas by, and they having somebody that'll tell you to slow down or having somebody to tell you to speed up is a very, very powerful ally. And I think, you know, relying on your faith in God, praying about decisions that you're going through, it's helped me immensely. I wouldn't want to do it without that for sure.
What fears did you feel like you had to push through the most out of this? I guess what would be like the biggest thing that early on you kind of said that you were good and moved forward through? Did you have one of those, a little bit of a Daniel in the lion's den moment, or
Yeah,
not?
well, I
Not
don't know if
really.
I've completely pushed through this, but probably the fear and failure, fearing that I was going to have to sell out and be the guy that couldn't handle the opportunity he was given and had to move on. And I hadn't, I don't think I've completely conquered that fear, but it's not as heavy on me as it was 2 years ago, and not even heavy as it was on me a year ago. Just getting past that fear of, is almost like, well, it'd be easier not to even try, because if I don't try, I know I'm not going to fail at it, which that would have been a failure to not pursue the thing that I wanted to pursue more than anything. But it was definitely something that was very tempting, was to, I'll keep 30 acres, run me a few cows and go to work. And, it'd be easier that way for me at least. But pushing through that fear, and, if I do go belly up and go bankrupt, well, we'll start over again. It's not over just because something I tried doesn't work out.
That is fantastic perspective, and that's 100% accurate. You can hit rock bottom, but life still goes on. Like it's what we consider rock bottom and actual rock bottom, but you could flop in business and it doesn't change. It's a hey, okay, so the next day, guess what? You get up and regardless of what it is, you're going to work. You're going to, anyway, that was a pretty good take there. I like that. Wh- So I think you almost answered this a little bit because you had to let that go in order to grow. Would you say that's really been
Yes.
like what belief kept you grounded? Like a belief in yourself, just a belief that God's got you.
Yeah, I would say believing in God, and then also, you know, having people around me that believed in me helped. It's gonna sound kind of cheesy, I guess, but it helped me to believe in myself, to believe that this is something that I could be successful at. And anybody that's grown up around agriculture, you've got everybody, and I got people that I love more than anything that did not want me to go into agriculture and told me, I mean, got some of them told me this 2 weeks ago that, there ain't no money in it. You never gonna make it, you know. But I also had the people that thought that I could make it and made it clear to me that I thought I could make it. And so for me already thinking I could make it, having men that I respected say, "No, you got this," it meant a lot to me.
I really like that, and it's on the heels of I saw a video of have you ever seen that Ryan Kelly guy? He does some he's a big YouTube platform guy, ex dairy farmer. He's got a few beefers now up in Wisconsin.
Yeah, I think I've seen a little bit of that.
And he was talking about that as well, where it's just hey, we can believe in these guys and support them, whether we're pushing them towards, telling them, hey, you can do this, or whether we're giving advice or whatever we're doing to help them grow, or we can take our hands off of it. And he was actually relating this to Pontius Pilate, where he just washes his hands of it, like, oh, watch over there. That's interesting. And, it was an interesting take, and I kind of like it because it does need to be that level of support. And I think it's one of the things that, if anything, the independence of the American farmer has kind of went too far sometimes, where we don't push that support for the young farmer as much as it should be. Um, just my perspective. That's not, I don't mean to get on my thing. So, um, you're doing something neat this year that I think there's opportunities for. So this kind of goes with pressures that producers are facing. We know that row crops prices are down from what they have been. And with fertilizer being what it is, people were giving up ground in your area. So you got the opportunity to get some of that ground near some of your pasture ground where you're fencing in and doing some sorghum Sudan and whatnot through there and going to background some stalkers. I think that's a brilliant idea. That is something that just on the heels of we're seeing guys giving up acreage in the row crop world. What are you thinking with the pressures in the cattle industry? What do you think is the biggest pressure that cattle guys are facing right now, or you could look at it as a whole?
Yeah, I think loss of pasture land is a huge one, and I mean I can think right now of several hundred acres of pasture ground that went into crop ground last year, which you know is is absurd to me. And one of them was a farm I really wanted, and I think I think part of the problem is a lot of cow guys got really used to the $40 acre rent, and the idea of paying anything competitive to what a crop farmer would offer is not even an option. I mean, the reason one of these farms I know of went out of pasture is because he wouldn't pay more than the $39 an acre he was paying at the time. And the guy said, "Well, I'm gonna let my son-in-law farm it," and so it went into crop ground. When I think, you know, land cost is high, but as far as, and I'm probably need to make sure none of my landlords are listening to me talk about prices that I'd be willing to pay, but I think it's not as high a cost when I factor in everything it costs to raise a cow over the year, adding in, you know, another $30 on top of that to raise your rent, and whether that means you're paying $100 an acre rent for pasture ground, or, there's some pasture ground that's worth closer to 150, as far as carrying capacity. And, you know, 2 acres per cow is not a set rule. I know a ground that's in my county that's closer to 5 acres, and I know a ground that's closer to 1 acre per cow. And to understand that carrying capacity, I think that's where the advantage is of running on crop ground with these high producing, summer annuals has a real advantage to spread that cost, not as many acres, really high quality feed. I feel like I'm dollar ahead than renting somebody's old 40-acre patch that's majority broom sage.
That probably hasn't seen fertilizer since Hector was a pup.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. I would agree with that, especially when you start talking about what summer annuals you're planting, as far as really being able to get down there and bring some of those nutrients back up to the surface instead of watching them all go away. So, um, yeah, that's you kind of had some great advice there early on for young people. So let's wrap this up on what's the 1 year and kind of 5 year hopes and dreams for George.
I hope to get some more ground bought. We are blessed to buy a couple of farms last year, and it looks like, land's going down in value in our county, which is not something that I thought would happen. And so hopefully we get the opportunity to buy some more and grow, you know, have some more stable ground to make growing the cow herd easier. I'd like to I'd like to get more back into selling bred heifers. I enjoyed doing that before when I did it, and I hadn't done it as much just because I've been sending them as feeders if they weren't something that I was going to keep back to breed. But I'd like to grow that into a larger portion of my business, is selling bred heifers or heifer pairs, and just keep on improving the genetics of my herd and the quality of my herd to be something that other people want to put into theirs. And then, just keep on figuring out this winter feed deal. I'm convinced it's not brown bales of hay from November 1st to April 1st every year. I think it's a definite tool, but I want to try other things and learn from other people that are doing things that are a little outside the ordinary way that we feed cows in West Tennessee.
100%. And we didn't circle back into that conversation, and we should have. But Dr. Bruno on last week, he had said, he had made that comment about, I think it was like 170 some days we feed hay in Tennessee, which, as a southern state, and I know we're a transition state when it comes to the zones, but that's an insane number of days that we're feeding hay to cattle. And we can definitely do better. So I look forward to seeing and being a part of that journey as well, because that could be a whole nother a whole nother piece when we get some better answers for it. Because so much of that plays into, and we talked a little bit about the options as far as leaving your grain sorghums or your milo, whatever you want to call it, and putting that out there and letting it frost and stand, and then going out and either swathing it, because I've heard of that. I guess that's more of a Canadian thing, because they don't get all the rain and the ground's frozen and there it lays, or just putting them out there. So very interesting to me, because it's not something I'm familiar with. but we just have that different climate where we don't have frozen ground, so we can't do that. We got to be careful that if it goes down, it's going to start rotting, so they have to be able to get it while it's standing. There's a lot of great ways we could go with that, and we will save that for another day. But I love that that's part of that mindset of, hey, I'm going to figure this out a little better on at least what works for you. So George, I appreciate you coming and hanging out with us this evening on Around the Fence Post.
Well, thank you, sir. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a good one. I had some fun with that. So, all right, guys, if you got anything out of this, please like and subscribe, share it to all your favorite people, and it's on all your podcast platforms: iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube primarily. And we are getting on more platforms as we go. I will see you next time on Around the Fence Post.
As we wrap up today's episode, we hope something we shared helped you, challenged you, or gave you a new perspective. If even one moment stood out, please share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. That's how this community grows, one conversation at a time. You can find us as Around the Fence Post on Facebook and Wet Meadows Seed on Facebook and Instagram. We appreciate you being here. We'll see you next time, Around the Fence Post.